At the end of the tunnel is about a lonely, depressed chain smoker and paraplegic computer engineer who lives with his old dog, who is just as immobile with his legs as he is, and who rents out one of the rooms of his house to a lovely young woman named Berta, who happens to work as a stripper, and her young daughter Betty, who happens to be mute. One night, while working in his basement where he repairs computers, he starts hearing noises and voices and discovers that a group of thieves are building a tunnel under his house in order to get inside and rob a nearby bank. So he begins to monitor the work of the bank robbers, led by the exceptionally douchey Galeretto, takes notes of every little detail concerning the strategy of the embezzlement, and begins to make plans to prevent them from accomplishing their goal. When it comes to Spanish suspense films, I can say that I have been won over quite a while ago, with some recent ones like Marshland, Retribution, or The Fury of a Patient Man being some of my favorite thrillers of recent memory. Now, I'm not that familiar with Argentinian cinema. I mean, of course, some recent ones that have gained international recognition like Wild Tales or The Secret in Their Eyes, I'm familiar with those, but when it comes to straight-up thrillers, not so much. And I think this is a fitting introduction because, yeah, it is mostly an Argentinian crew, but it is a Spanish co-production, so it really has this very European flavor to it. Since this film is so rich with plenty of suspense, thrills, twists, and turns, I find it really hard to talk about it and try to completely avoid all spoilers. So I'm going to talk about some minor spoilers that mostly show up in the very first act, in the first half hour of the film, that will ultimately lead to much more important and much more revelatory twists and turns that I'm going to lead you to discover for yourselves. It's very strange how it feels that the film is simultaneously overstaying its welcome and feels too short and underdeveloped at the same time. I think this is because the twists and turns in the film aren't spread out in a consistent manner. I think the film uses its most obvious and cliched twists very early on. It lays out its cards on the table very early on. Like, for example, when Berta is looking for her daughter who is hiding, she comes across a burnt up and destroyed car hidden somewhere in the unkept garden behind the man's house, indicating to the fact that the cause of the man's reclusiveness and bitterness and paraplegia might be that he lost his very own wife and daughter in a car accident that he himself might have been involved in. She behaves very affectionately towards him, she throws him a surprise birthday party, she dances for him, she genuinely seems to care for him, and it's not just pity. And the little girl really starts bonding with the dog. It really fuels life both into her and the small pooch. It really acts like a sort of therapy for both of them. But the end of the very first act reveals Berta's identity to be the girlfriend of Galeretto, the gang leader. The whole reason she is in the house and being nice to our dude is to distract him actually from what is going on next door. This is where the film really starts kicking into gear. We are finally introduced to our villains and to the major moral dilemma our main character, whose name I just can't fucking remember, is going to be faced with throughout the film. Like, what do I do? There is this woman, I thought she cared about me, but ultimately it is revealed that she is just a mere puppet in this robbery that's being conducted literally underneath my feet. What do I do? Her child is innocent. Should I just stand back and pretend that I'm not noticing anything and let them get away with it? Should I be more selfish and intervene and try to take the money for myself? But of course it's not so simple, it's not so black and white, there are some very dark secrets being kept. Betty is not mute without a reason. Galeretto, besides being a thief, might be a little bit more dangerous and cunning than people realize, but all of that stuff is set aside a little bit somewhere in the middle of the film for the approximately 30 to 35 minute thrill ride that takes place underneath the house in the tunnel. Now that's really where the cinematography and the soundtrack of the film truly shines. You see, we're in this very contained space where the only way in is the very same way out, and the survival of our main character depends on mere seconds of taking action. It's really very much edge of the seat stuff, very awesome. But what I said in the beginning about the film feeling simultaneously like it's overstaying its welcome and underdeveloped and too short at the same time is mostly present in the last act and the last half hour. Stuff like, if that character knew that character for such a long time, then how come they didn't notice certain things? Or, it's clear, but it becomes a little bit too complex for this sort of film, like exactly who is using who, who is whose puppet, or certain relations start feeling a little bit rushed and a little bit shallow, or stuff like that, or the way they eventually resolve the situation I thought was very interesting and very cool, but it just arrives a little bit too late, like 5 or 10 minutes too late. I feel like this is an uneven film that could have been trimmed down, certain things could have been trimmed down, and then certain other things could have been added to flesh characters out a little bit more and to flesh relationships out a little bit more. But overall, this was a film I really enjoyed. I wasn't bored for a single second. I think it's very well done, both from a technical standpoint as well as an acting standpoint, so I highly recommend it. Want to ask you guys, what are some of your favorite Spanish language suspense films or Spanish language films in general. Really curious to know. Don't forget to leave your comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. Until then, folks, as always, stay cool, stay awesome, goodbye.